All right, perfect. So guys, let's just jump in. I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get going. And then remember the Q&A part, I'm going to go through this first, and then we'll take any Q&A questions that we have. I'll answer anything. I'll answer items that's related to today's topic, or just anything that you're having challenges with QuickBooks, even if it doesn't relate to this topic. So you can ask me anything you want in regards related to QuickBooks. So we'll do that right after I go through how to manage QuickBooks for attorneys. So Sylvia, just give me a thumbs up. You can see my screen.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to manage QuickBooks for attorneys, right? I want to talk specifically about, the problems that attorneys have, which is, their trust accounts, their ally accounts. So how do we actually set them up? This gets really confusing to work with because it's double sided accounting. I want to talk about how to bill efficiently if you're attorney. And then if you're attorney, right, there's either cases or there's matters that the attorney has. How do we track profitability by cases and matters? And when I'm going through this, even if you're not actually working on attorneys, it should be able to expand you, to open you up, to say, hey, the functionality of QuickBooks, and some of this stuff is versatile. It can change for different industries. So, but I'm going to talk about clients that I worked with today and what we've done with them for QuickBooks that you may not know. Hopefully that will spark some ideas for you, that what you can do with your clients if you're going after attorneys at the attorney's market, or if you're an attorney that's on his call and has been struggling with QuickBooks. The whole purpose is to be able to share some of the things that we've saw over the last 20 years, and hopefully that will help you run your practice more efficiently. All right, so that's the kind of the agenda here. And then just going down here. So QuickBooks has, the ability to integrate, with different softwares, right? And if you are an attorney, or if you are someone that serves the attorney, the first thing that you want to begin to talk about and the questions that you want to ask them is are they using some type of practice management system or some type of CRM software, right? Some of the ones that we worked with is things as Clio, Leap, Rocket Matter's a big one, My Case. So what you're looking for is, and the question that you want to ask, are they using one? Because if they are, what we want to think about, what will happen to the business or what will happen to the practice if they integrate their practice management software, right? You got to begin to understand the workflow of that business if we're really going to give them value. So what do I mean by that? So if any of you guys have worked with any practice management software, what they have the ability to do is actually bill their customers. So if you have a client or you have an attorney that's using Clio, one of the things that they may be using that platform for is to create their invoices. So if we are going to come in and we're going to be the bookkeeper, we're going to support this client, if they're doing their billing in Clio, we don't want to really duplicate that in QuickBooks, right? The other thing that they might be doing in Clio when they send those bills out, they may be actually getting paid. They may have an integration that has a payment processor that they're actually paying those invoices that go out in Clio as well, right? It's a waste of time for them to do it in Clio and then you to support them and do that same thing again in QuickBooks. So how do we drive efficiency? We want to create it so that this practice management software that they're using, that information is integrated in QuickBooks, it syncs to QuickBooks, and then QuickBooks has the functionality to sync some of that information back to Clio. So that's the first thing we need to ask. Whenever we're going to work with an attorney, what practice management software they're using, what CRM they're using, and then go out, right? It's easy as a Google search, right? Go and look at that software and says, does it integrate with QuickBooks? And if it does, finding out what are the components that integrate. This way, you could be more efficient and you can give this client real value, right? You don't want to be that person that's not thinking practically. You need to think practically about the business and how they work. We don't want to just go in here and says, hey, this is how to use it. We want to understand what their workflow is, what their process is, and adopt that to make that efficient for them in QuickBooks. So you need to ask that question if you're going to add value to that client's life. So that's the first thing you need to find out. Can their practice managed software integrate with QuickBooks? And if it does, how does it integrate? And then define what is the relationship going to be with you and the attorney to make sure this all works, right? The day and age is over that we want to do duplicate work, right? I see this over and over again. You know, they're doing their bills. You go in here, you put that bill again. No, let's figure out how to integrate to make that work. So that's one of the first things that you want to do as you're actually having the conversation with the client. Then trust accounts. And now I'm going to talk about this if there's no integration, right? So my next part of this conversation is not talking about the integration. This is talking specifically, they don't have a practice management software. There's nothing that they're actually using. They do not want to integrate. So how do we actually begin to service them in QuickBooks to give them, you know, the information that they need? Huge, right? Attorneys can possibly get audited, right? What are they getting audited from? You know, are they trust accounts accurate, right? Their trust accounts, they're holding money on the behalf of someone else. So if I'm an attorney and I take $100,000 from someone and that money's supposed to actually sit in trust, I can't actually use that money if I have not earned it. So it's very important that these funds, right, it's a trust account. It means that these funds are in trust. These funds are not for my use, right? These guys can lose their license. They can get debarred because they're not handling their trust accounts correctly. So we need to make sure that we have a process to make sure that we can support them with their trust accounts. I'm going to tell you a real story, right? When I first started working with an attorney, you know, years ago, I screwed this up big time because I did not understand how different reconciling trust accounts was from any other industry. So there is nothing like it. And when I go into QuickBooks, I'm going to show you under the hood how to do some of this today, right? But I need to make sure at all times, my trust account that has my bank balance, my liability account that has that trust account is always the same. If I have $100,000 that I'm holding in my bank account and my trust account, I technically owe that money back to the client until I utilize it to service them or pay down for expenses for them. So if I got $100,000 in my trust account, I need to have a report that shows whose $100,000 this is for. And this is where a lot of people screw this up. It's not like, hey, you say, I got 100,000, it's just 100,000. No, you need to be able to segment these funds and says, it's $100,000 there. I got $20,000 from Sylvia. There's another $20,000 that's out there that's from Candace. You know, there's another $20,000 that's out there from Julie that I'm holding. We need to make sure that we can actually create a report to do that. And there's two ways to do that. One's in summary form, and then one's in detail. And that's just going to be a preference of how you want to keep that. But the first thing you need to make sure, if you are going to protect this client and you are the person that's in charge of the books, that trust account, you need to be able to produce a report that shows the funds that you're handling. If you get that wrong, you are causing a liability to your client, right? So this is not like, hey, I do bookkeeping, I do accounting. No, this is like real deal, right? This is like real deal that like I was under the impression that, hey, this client's going to actually sue me because for them, what I was doing was really malpractice, right? And guess what? They're an attorney. It's what? They know the law, right? So we need to make sure that if we're going to do work with attorneys, we are clear, right? We're getting clear here. You're responsible for these trust accounts, or we're responsible for these trust accounts, and this is how we're going to handle them. And we're going to make sure that at the end of the day, we can produce a report that shows what's in those trust accounts. And I'll show you how to set that up in QuickBooks. But that is, if you don't get anything else, this is not bookkeeping 101, right? This is really enhanced. I need to make sure that this is right because someone can actually lose their license. So just keep that in mind. This is a big issue for attorneys, making sure they know what's in their trust accounts. I can't stress that more. If you don't get anything else, don't go down this path if you do not know how to do work with attorneys, if you do not know how to keep the books, right? Second thing that we want to do here, we're going to manage this business for attorneys. We want to make the process efficient for them, right? One of the things that attorneys do, they need to track their time. So you guys know some of the functionality of QuickBooks. Using QuickBooks Time will be really good for them for two reasons. One, no matter where they go, if they're going to court, QuickBooks Time on the mobile app, they can put what client they're working on. What's so good about that, that time syncs back to QuickBooks, and then they can actually bill that client from the time they put in the mobile app. So we want to attempt to use QuickBooks Time. Also, if I'm using QuickBooks Time, and maybe I have associates or have other attorneys that's on my team, right? I may actually pay them on payroll. So how good would it be for them to have one app that they can put their time in? Their time goes into the matters or the case. I actually be able to create an invoice to go to the client for their time. At the same time, I can pay that associate or that attorney that's on my team what I owe them for the time that they spent. So let's try to use technology that's out there to make their life easier. This way, also, if they work on certain accounts and their client says, show me, a report that shows me everything that you worked on my business, that can be generated really easy, right? So if I'm going to manage this, let me manage it and say, hey, how do I decrease time? There's so many attorneys out there that has another app that they're doing time for. Why? Have them get rid of that, throw that away if they're using QuickBooks, if they're not using a practice management system, and do it all in here, right? We want to help them manage that process that they're doing. So if it fits, suggest them using QuickBooks Time, right? Then what we want to do, we want to use billable expenses and receipts, right? QuickBooks has the ability to set up an email address for these attorneys, whatever the email should be at QBO Docs, right? So when these attorneys go out and, they entertain people for lunch, right? That person can snap a picture or email that into QuickBooks. When that billable expense that they're going to charge back to the client, right? Inside QuickBooks, we can actually capture that and put that on an invoice. So using QuickBooks for receipts and expenses and making those items billable is going to be great here because, right, we want them to be in real time as they're going out, as they're entertaining people, take pictures of these receipts that they're getting. They just took a taxi from here to there. What's usually going to happen is that they're going to lose that receipt. It's going to be on their credit card. But if they really want to have a way to digitally capture all those things, attach them in QuickBooks, and then make sure they can charge it back, the best way to do that is to use the receipt functionality in QuickBooks to capture that information. So this is a way that we're going to get all of the costs that's related to the matter or the case or the client into QuickBooks efficiently. So think about using that as well. Okay. Then we want to use matters, right? Here's the thing about QuickBooks. QuickBooks talks about things and functionality a certain way. You got to understand the functionality and says, okay, this could be used for X, right? So in QuickBooks, you don't have anywhere that's going to say matters, right? And when I say matters, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a case. I'm talking about something that they're working on for a client. Maybe they have one client, but they have multiple cases or multiple matters. So the reason what we can do here with QuickBooks is two things. We have sub-customers or we have projects. I can actually begin to say my sub-customers, right, which is called sub-customers if you don't know the industry, what all I'm doing is say use sub-customers as matters or use projects as matters. This way is just another way for you to segment the data. And let's just say that Sylvia is one of my clients, but Sylvia has two matters with me, right? Sylvia has two lawsuits that she's doing. Well, for me, I just don't want to know overall, how much money I'm making over Sylvia. I want to know, based upon each matter, are those individual matters profitable or not? And the way that I basically begin to do that is that I use projects or I use sub-customers as matters, okay? So I want to do that. And then lastly, what I'm doing here, right, if I put that data in by matters or by client, then I can run a report for profitability purposes to show me exactly how profitable I'm going to matter. So any cost that went to that matter, as well as any income that went to that matter, I can now say, okay, this is what we made, and then see, what we paid out all of our associates to do that. So I want to be able to track profitability reports. If you can do that, right, you are really adding value to an attorney's life, because everything is going to be managed in one place into QuickBooks. And then they'll have information at their fingertips to be able to make better decisions of where their business is. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to go into demo mode, right? Because I know I shared a lot of, this is a technical topic we're talking about, right? I shared a lot in terms of on these PowerPoint decks, but I want to transition here, go into QuickBooks and just show you some of the things under the hood. And then right after I do that, we will just open up for Q&A and see whatever questions you have, right? Because you guys like, hey, looking at my screenshots, like, well, show me what the hell you're talking about. Well, like, I see the PowerPoint, but I need to stay high view so you can understand the steps that you need to do to get there. But now I want to go under the hood a little bit and show you in QuickBooks how to do that. So let me just get into my test environment. And I actually need some water, and I didn't bring any water over here today, which was not good. Feel like I am going hoarse, but I'll just log in here and show you guys this, and then we'll open up for Q&A. And as I'm demonstrating this,
share your screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to get in here and then share my screen. As I'm going through this, guys, when I share my screen, if you guys have any questions that's coming up, pop those into the Q&A section so that then I can begin to field any of those questions that you guys have. Okay, so Sylvia, I am almost there. So sample company. Okay, totally disregard that this sample company is a landscaping company. It is just the only sample company that I'm able to get into QuickBooks where I'm not screwing up a real company, right? So I'm in this test environment, display environment, and just act as if, I know this may be hard for some of you guys. This says design and landscape and services. Just totally disregard that. I'm just going to show you some of the things that I was talking about, and just go under the hood. And let me just go back to my deck really fast and go from beginning to end. So the first thing on integrations, right? So if you are in your client's company, you have this option here for apps. Sylvia, am I sharing my screen now?
Yes, you are.
And you guys are seeing my QuickBooks screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Because for some reason, I still have the other one coming up on mine. Let me just stop sharing for 1 second. Okay, cool. So I talked about integrations in the beginning, right? So QuickBooks has apps down here that you can find apps. So one of the things that you want to do here is just click on Find Apps, right? Ask the client if they're using a practice management system. If there's a system that integrates with QuickBooks Online, the integration is pretty easy to sync. So you just want to basically look and see if there's an integration out there, and then actually sync that to QuickBooks. And then once you sync it, it's going to be connected. So test and see if there's an integration out there so that you can connect your client based upon the software that they're actually using to run their practice, right? So that's where your apps is at. You're just going to find apps and go through that and figure that out. So once you actually do that, right, there's a few things that I was talking about, and I'm going to go to banking here. And when I go to banking, you guys are going to notice that here is receipts. So take this on for size, right? I was talking about, hey, this attorney goes out, how do we basically get receipts in here? you have this option to forward from email. So just say that one of your attorneys takes a picture of a dinner that he went with, takes a screenshot of that picture, and then just clicks on his smartphone to forward that to any email that you set up. What that basically does, it takes the expense, it puts it inside of QuickBooks, and then you can basically begin to add these transactions to the customer or to the project, which I'm calling a matter, so that the attorney can see exactly what goes on the matter and you can make that billable. So this is where I would send my receipts in. Once my receipts go in, and I'm going to add those in, they're going to drop into my bank feeds. And if I send the receipt in that matches, let's just say my bank fee says a $55 transaction, and if that matches, QuickBooks will say match here for that receipt. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to click on that item, and then here's my vendors or customers. When I click down here and I go to my customers here, if you notice here, this Freeman Sports says customer, but then you have these sub customers. This is what I was talking about of having those matters and creating those matters. So this is the customer or the client. And then down here, these matters would be the sub customers that you will be able to assign that to with the receipts that's attached. The reason why I'm actually doing that, because I am segmenting my data. So at any point in time, I can see how much cost I have on the matter, and I can actually begin to build that back to the client. So you want to be able to take advantage of that. So that's how I send receipts in when I kind of talked about that a little bit. Also want to go to look at the balance sheet for a second, right? I talked to you guys about trust accounts, okay? So let's just pretend that this checking account is my trust account and it has $1,201 in it, okay? What I should have here is a corresponding liability down here. That will be my trust liability. And that trust liability should equal this amount. Here is the thing that you need to know. Every transaction that runs through the trust account, it hits the trust liability account in QuickBooks. Now, this may be confusing for some of you guys. Every single transaction, I don't care what it is, if it got paid out of the trust account, it needs to hit the trust liability. Why? If I pay someone out of a trust account, I'm using clients' trust funds. So when I book these transactions into QuickBooks, very easy for me to book that. So my checking account, which is my trust account, offsets that same liability. This way, those balances are always the same and they offset, okay? The trick is here is, I talked to you before about, are you gonna have a summary trust account or are you going to have detail? So if I just click on new here, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Let me go to a transaction that's in my checking account, right? All of these transactions should hit my trust liability account. So these transactions that's here, this open balance equity, right? I'm going to say that this shouldn't hit there. I'm going to just set up this trust account. I'm going to call it trust liability. What I want to do is that when I create that, I'm going to call it a other current liability, right? And I want to say that this is a trust account. Liabilities, right? Trust account. This is just my trust account that corresponds with this bank account. What I do need to do is make sure I pick the matter or the customer that this belongs to, right? Because I told you I need to make sure I am segmenting and be able to produce a list at any time that shows me what I'm holding in my trust funds. So I will pick this matter here, let's just say. So now this is going to be recorded here. This is going to go to my trust liability, and it's $5,000. So now when I go here and I look at my balance sheet, and remember, every transaction I here should go to the trust account. This is not the case here. This is not how this was set up. But now you see my trust liability has $5,000 in it. Okay. This, if every transaction went here, I would have no problem matching my trust liability. Where I see a lot of bookkeepers get this wrong is when they forget that rule. Every single, I'm going to say it again, every single transaction that hits the bank account for a trust account needs to go to the trust liability. And then if I need to print a report to show me what's in trust liability, if I posted everything correctly, I can come into QuickBooks, click on my trust account, and then I can say, give this to me by my customer. And then QuickBooks will basically group this together. So I'll know from every trust account what was the amount. So QuickBooks will give me a nice report showing Freeman Sports has X dollars in his trust account if I did all the incoming money and all of the outgoing money. Okay. So I need to make sure I'm classifying in that detail for every transaction in my trust account. It needs to be the matter, it needs to be trust account, and of course the amount. And if you do that for every transaction that hits your trust account, you will be very clear at any point in time of how much money you're holding in trust by client. So you want to make sure that that is the way that you are handling trust accounts. So you have the add-on here for, in here you have just regular time entry, right? I talked about time entry, where if they are using QuickBooks, this will be the associate, right? The associate will pick here, hey, who's the matter? Here's my matter again that I use on this. And then I just want to put my hours and time. Here's my box for billable. I can check that off and I can say how many hours was for this particular client. So 1 hour is billable, and I can actually save that. And then this way, when it goes to, this is my rate, sorry, this is my rate here. I'll just say $50, but I don't think there's an attorney that charges $50. And I'll say that 1 hour of time, and I can say save and close. What I'm basically doing, I'm creating ability that when I go to bill, I will have that information that's in there for that particular matter that I can bill. And I'm going to show you two more. So in terms of my expenses, same thing with expenses, right? Who's the payee? Whoever I paid. Let's say I went to Bob's Burger Joint, but I went for a particular client. I'm going to actually pick up and say this item's billable, and I'm going to pick the client that it was for. And you notice I'm always picking on this particular client because I just want to show you how this works. So this is going to be just a meal. So I'm going to put that meals entertainment. It was $400. I'm saying it's billable because when I go to bill this matter, I want to bill back out for this time. I'm making the progress. I'm making the process so that's seamless. When I go to actually bill the client, I'm billing efficiently. So now I have time in for Freeman, and I also have an expense. And it'll be the same thing if there was a receipt forwarded here and you capture it that way as well. So now when I hit save and close, and it comes to the end of the month, the end of the week, and you need to bill this client, when I go to new and do an invoice, okay, I want to pull up that matter, which is here, right? I was picking on this matter the whole time. What you guys will notice for that matter, I have the billable time and I have the expenses. So if I'm an attorney, I can just say add all these charges onto the bill, and then I'm pretty much done with the billing for this matter, right? So now for Freeman Sports matter, I put my hours in, I put all my expenses in. When I go and create the bill, those are being held in a drawer for me. I'm adding those on to an invoice, and then I can send this to the client, and then the client can actually pay this invoice, but I billed them for everything that the charges that I incurred, right? The reason why I'm doing is I want to see what has happened on this particular job. So I'm going to hit save and close here. And then the last thing I'll do, I'll shut up and then I'll take Q&A questions. When I go to my reports, I have the ability to say, show me a profit and loss report. And when I see that profit and loss report, I can say, show it to me by customers. And when I run that report, right, I begin to see all my customers. You guys know that this is the one I was picking on, this particular matter, right? So now it shows the billable expense income. It shows all these costs that I have. So not only can I have a profitability statement on the entire practice, but I can have a profit and loss statement by each matter. That's what makes this so powerful. So then the attorney can begin to think about, do I need to raise my rates? I didn't make enough money on that matter. How do we change this as we go forward? And what that looks like. And then it also captures, if I do all my expenses, I never miss a billing opportunity, right? There's some receipts that don't go to the client, doesn't go to the matter. So that's a billing opportunity that's missed. And of course that you could have does not get billed back to the client. So really to wrap up and just round this off, QuickBooks has functionality in it that you can use for attorneys. Doesn't mean that you can't use this for other industries. You can, right? So use it based on the industry you're in. But what we just went over, and just what I want to recap with you, and I'll take Q&A, is how to set up trust accounts, right? That's the proper way to do this. You know, if I'm going to do billing out of QuickBooks for attorneys, let's use the functionality that's there. Let's use the time app. You know, I showed you the simple time app, but maybe QuickBooks Time works better because they could be remote using it, right? And then actually tracking those items by projects or sub customers so that I can run a profit and loss report that shows it to me in such detail that it helps me make better business decisions. So that's my recommendation for you guys. And don't forget, if you can integrate software because they're using a CRM system, utilize that because that's going to make your life easier and you're going to be able to give more value to your clients. So hopefully that was helpful. This course here, well, this what I went over, this was kind of just a quick high overview. This will be in our online portal. So if someone's like, hey, you know what, you went really fast, I'm going to dig deeper and go down and it's go much slower, right? I only got a few minutes with you guys. I want to make sure I get to Q&A, but I will build that into the online platform that will have this course for attorneys, which will go a lot slower. And then you guys can do this by looking at those courses. If any of you guys like, hey, this makes sense, you went too fast, I want to have a conversation with you, I'll drop my link into the chat. Feel free to book a call with me and we can talk about how we can further support you in your development of working with attorneys, or if you are an attorney, help you to kind of make the transitions that you need to make so that it is more efficient for you.